Well, I just finally saw Jeremy Clarkson, Richard Hammond, and James May's new show, The Grand Tour, which is essentially a spin-off of Top Gear. It follows the same sort of format with them doing these crazy adventures and test driving vehicles across several countries. The only difference, so it's not on BBC. You don't have to pay the TV license just to watch it, and they don't have the Stig on there. It's aired only on Amazon, which is the same company that also brought you Manchester by the Sea, Man in the High Castle, and Transparent. Some of those other ones I've just mentioned. For the most part, I would have to say it's good, but it's not great, essentially, at the same time. I think much of it has to do with just I'm very familiar with Top Gear myself ever since seeing it about nearly 10 years ago and seeing how a lot of the jokes are quite similar as well. I felt like, the new format just doesn't quite build up as I would have thought. But I did think one of the best assets of the Grand Tour has to be watching the trio, Hammond, May, and Clarkson, on this little thing called Conversation Street, where they would talk about things that are related to the British car industry, automotive matters, and so on and so forth. He even talks about why young people are driving less vehicles on the roads these days, and Germans and the Finnish issuing high penalties and knocking off people's points off their driver's license for speeding or tailgating for that reason. So it does have some interesting points to say about there. As far as episodes are concerned, each episode has its own little story to tell. Episode 1 is the introduction, starts out with a big bang. It looks like it was very high budget. They used a cover of the Jimmy Cliff song, I Can See Clearly Now the Rain Has Gone. And it follows them driving, all the way to the California desert. And then they talk about more vehicles from there. And then episode 2, it's not relevant to detail about what each episode is all about. But I do know episode 6 particularly is set in Finland, and that one was funny, but it was very innuendo laden, which I would say as well. And there's the one episode, Environmental, which I think is episode 4, which I thought was very clever. In fact, that they used, chassis from like 4x4s and so on, and they tried to put all these natural and artificial devices on there instead of knocking metallic, which you would find in a regular vehicle, like the one I am sitting in right now. So I thought that one was quite clever. And it was very disturbing to see all the maggots crossing around in Clarkson's vehicle. I was like, oh dear, I didn't know what was going to happen there. Speaking of the northern accent thing, Clarkson does it several times. He even goes to Whitby on 2 different occasions, which I thought was quite clever. In this instance, why I said Whitby, not London, is because they're now filming all these Grand Tour episodes, each individual places, like South Africa and then Finland and then the Netherlands. The Namibian Part 1, Part 2 episodes, episodes 7 and 8, they don't have it. But each and every episode, it's set in a different location. The tent that they use to show when they're talking and doing the Conversation Street thing, it's all mobile. So it makes you feel like you're in the scene right there. And then about that host that they use to test drive the super vehicles. In several instances, they drive the Aston Martin Vulcan and the Honda NSX. They use a guy called the American, who's their replacement for the Stig. Unfortunately, he's not quite that memorable. He does give some very corny, cheesy lines that, for some Americans, they might be pissed off at. I thought it was quite clever. All in all, let me just summarize that the best thing about it is the jokes itself, similar to Top Gear, but doesn't have the kind of novel pizzazz that Top Gear had, essentially. But hey, on the bright side, at least you don't have to pay the TV license just to watch it, but you will have to pay that per year, per month fee just to watch the show itself, or for some people who like to pirate it online, those dodgy assholes. But yeah, now you don't have to worry about it, but you have to get Amazon. But you can get a free trial for about 30 days, I believe. And if you don't like the TV show, then you can cancel it before the 30-day deadline. And in the meantime, you can also watch Man in the High Castle and Transparent as well. Sorry, it feels like I'm going to sneeze. At least you get my point. Alright, everyone. Toodles.